Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of ReGen Monterey. It's October 18th and it is 9:01. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. We do have our vice chair online and another member online. Thank you. So let's go through with our roll call.
Chair Shirley?
Here.
Vice Chair Delgado?
Here.
Director Blackwalter?
Here.
Director Askew? Director Peak?
Here.
Director Barber? Director Ferlito?
Here.
Director Garcia Arizola?
Here.
Director McKee?
Here.
We have a forum.
Okay, great. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move on to public communications. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. I'll take anyone in the council chambers or board chambers or anyone online. No? All right, I'll close public comments. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have items 5A through 5D. Are there any directors who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda? All right, no one online. Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't want to pull the item, and I'm not necessarily from the public, but I did want to note that even though I didn't speak up very much at the last meetings, it doesn't show here that I was at the Finance Committee meeting earlier this month, and I was also at the board meeting last month,
Okay.
just for purposes of the record.
Okay, good. All right, great. Super. Thank you, Rob. Okay, I'll bring it back to the directors. We have
Move to approve 5A through D.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first with Jerry Backlewelder and a second with Director Peak. With those additions, I'm assuming that you'd like to make those
Yes.
additions. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I guess we need a roll call though, please.
Director Blackwalter?
Yes.
Director Ferlito?
Yes.
Director Arizola?
Yes.
Director McKee?
Yes.
Director Peak?
Aye.
Vice Chair Delgado?
Yes.
Chair Shirley?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we'll move on to recognition and presentations. We have a recognition of Javier Ayala, Sorter 2 for 25 years of service.
Thank you, Chair. Today we want to honor Javier Ayala. He's a sorter 2 at the materials recycling facility. 25 years is a service that is an outstanding tenure of service at one facility. It's not common, so we're very excited to have Javier here, and we also have Javier Jr. in the audience as well to watch his dad receive this award. So very excited that the Ayala legacy lives here at ReGen. We're very excited to him. Today we have Baldo. He is the supervisor at the MRF, and he is going to talk a little bit about Javier and receiving his recognition award for 25 years. Yeah, one word.
It has been an honor for me, like, to work supervise on Javi, you know, for short, for 25 years. He started, like I said, as a labor 1, moved up to a labor 2. He loves spending time with his family when he's not at work. Loves come to work every day, happy and helping customers. He's a big time 49er fan. And he loves going to the games, you know, to watch them live, especially this weekend with Kansas City. So yeah, it's an honor working for Javi. So. ¿Quieres decir algo?
No, muchas gracias a todos y gracias por ayudar a la demás gente.
He said you will thank everybody and just to help everybody out, you know. And like you said, Javi's legacy continues, so.
Aw.
That's all.
So much for that, congratulations on your. Okay, we'll move on to discussion 7A, authorize the general manager to negotiate a reimbursement agreement with California American Water Company for staff time related to the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I just wanted to do a little slight introduction on this item. As everybody is aware, CalAm has a position on just next adjacent to our property on Charlie Benson. And we had over the 15-year legacy, we have received inquiries regarding easements and other items of question. And we were suggested by Rob to start looking at a reimbursement agreement for any of the services that this public sector would provide to private, so we can account for it and we can build out our services. This is not taking any position around CalAm and water. It's just reducing the risk that we have as operating a public agency and providing a service to private. At this time, we have David Ramirez, our Director of Engineering, that's going to speak a little bit to some of the requests that we received.
Good morning, Director Shirley and members of the Board of Directors. And I don't have much to add for what Felipe just mentioned right now. As you know, the property right next to us, next to the Last Chance Mercantile, is the location where the desal plant has been planned. And one of their objectives is to connect to Monterey One Water. And so there may be some ask from CalAm about crossing property, et cetera. This agreement, as Felipe mentioned, does not put us in any position to commit to anything or that related to that project. It's just to start conversations with them about the project, learn more so that we can then further advise the board on any actions or decisions that need to be made. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have on the reimbursement agreement.
Questions from the directors? No, Director Delgado.
I'm sorry.
Just, okay,
I'll let the board members speak and then I just have a comment to make.
okay, great. All right, Director Delgado.
Yes, I'm leery to enter into any staff commitment to the CalAm project because our staff has a lot of things to do. And although their time would be reimbursed, their time can only be spent on one project at a time. And CalAm has, in my what I've been told by past staff, CalAm cost our district millions of dollars in deferred revenue that we did not get because we reserved some power allocation to CalAm. So I think that whatever we do with CalAm should include a look into history, into the finances, and a request for reimbursement of lost revenues because of our prior willingness to commit to CalAm. And so I am, for two reasons, unwilling to vote for a new commitment to CalAm because their staff time should not be spent on projects that aren't going to happen or are not good for our community. That's number one. And number two, they should reimburse our agency for the public finances lost in a fool's errand, or I should say something that never materialized in the past that we committed to in support of CalAm.
David, can you, Ron, go ahead, sorry.
You know, I just wanted to mention to the board, relative to this matter and going forward with these discussions with CalAm. Now, this is not a matter that arises to a constitutional due process requirement that you report any discussions outside of this board meeting. But I just wanted to mention, because we know this is a controversial issue in the community. It's very likely that you may be contacted or people want to speak to you about what we're doing here outside of the meeting. And so I think it would be I'm suggesting that it would be good practice for the board to agree that come to an agreement or agree, if you wish, that there be a disclosure that to the extent there's any ex parte communications, in other words, people in the community, one side or the other, CalAm or opponents to the project or whatever, speak to you relative to suggestions of how you might consider proceeding with this matter, that in future meetings, if there have been those kind of ex parte contacts, that there be a disclosure. That a board member say, oh, I want to say, I talked, somebody talked to me, or I talked to so-and-so, or whatever. I think would be good practice just to adopt them, just a suggestion.
Okay, all right. Just real quick, so David, can you speak to, how much time CalAm has already requested, like, how much time has ReGen spent communicating with CalAm prior to
Yeah,
even
it's-
having this negotiation?
It's been minimal, and the discussions we've had have been kind of stopped because we don't want to spend much time on it. There's review of any plans that they may send us, any discussions about agreements. And at the point where it started to be something that seemed to be real, we've basically said we need to talk to our board to make sure we're authorized to continue discussions, because some of those discussions involve design considerations, property considerations, and that's gonna take, as the mayor pointed out, that's gonna take ReGen's time, engineering time, time with the general manager, time conferring with legal, and that's why we're coming to the board today. It's been pretty minimal up to this point.
I can fully understand why Mayor Delgado would not want this to happen. Obviously, Marina has long opposed the desal plant, but CalAm's property, they are a neighbor to ReGen, and they are the supplier of water to a majority of the peninsula. What has happened in the past, if they've utilized district resources or impacted the district in the past? Well, the time to handle that was in the past, and what is it? The cows left the barn, and so I don't think that this board should stop any cooperative agreement with CalAm at this point, and it's just an exchange of information. We're not a decision-making body on water supply or the desal plant, so that's not really material.
I do have a question. It sort of makes me think about, again, some of Director Delgado's comments, is how would ReGen staff prioritize a request from CalAm? If you are currently working on a project for ReGen and you have a request that comes in from CalAm, how do you prioritize the time that you do spend on that?
Well, obviously, the ReGen work comes first. We serve ReGen's interests and ReGen's needs. The project review or documents, we could, in theory, hire a consultant to then manage a review, and we also do a subsequent review. These things, we need to know more about the project to be able to evaluate how to proceed with that sort of arrangement if it's needed at all. But really what we're talking about is spending time looking at a few hours, looking at a set of plans, understanding their project, going to a few meetings, so that we can then come to this body and let you know what their ask is, so we can receive direction. And so it's hard to say how much time it's going to take, because we haven't been authorized to look at any documents. We haven't been authorized to dive in. And that's what this agreement is about, allowing staff to then dive in to the project and then come back to you with what their ask is.
Is staff used to allocating, trying to keep track of the time they spend on a certain project and allocating it to a certain, source of billing? I think, is there going to be a method to
Yeah.
keep track of that?
The engineering team is definitely tracking its time on projects that it's working on. And we would then transfer that information to the counties, and they would invoice CalAm. It's something we can do easily.
Any further questions? Director Delgado?
yes, there's a saying that fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And it's not that long ago that the district lost a lot of money because of Cal-Am. And so with only my district hat on, nothing to do with the city of Marina, I think it's within our records and within our institutional memory to look back a short number of years and find out what it cost us as a district and the taxpayers to cooperate, coordinate, plan with Cal-Am. Cal-Am has a lot of resources. They're tied to the largest water company in the world. They can afford to reimburse our relatively small district, the money that we lost by, in good faith, cooperating with them. So with our intelligent staff, legal, and records, we should be able fairly easily to find out what we lost of taxpayer resources and have that as part of any agreement moving forward with Cal-Am as an early step before we potentially lose more money. And every step we take working with Cal-Am, now I'll put my Marina hat on and that of the rest of the peninsula cities, is an anti-community step because the overwhelming majority of the public does not want Cal-Am's project and is spending millions of dollars for all of our cities against the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District, against the Marina Coast Water District, against the city of Marina, so that this is not a community project. It's not a positive project. It's probably not going to happen. And it's with much dread that it's even moving forward. So I don't think we should be wrapped up into it until the point comes when it's a real project and it's past the legal hurdles, et cetera. They'll have plenty of time to do the engineering, et cetera. For us to spend our valuable time prematurely and against the community will is not a feather in our cap. And we should be at least concerned with the district's finances of the past because we have a client, potentially Cal-Am, that wants to engage with us financially, et cetera, in the future. We should come clean and rectify past financial losses before we engage financially with any partner in the future, especially one that's so well funded.
Couple questions. Can the staff address Director Delgado's comments at all in terms of past costs that from Cal-Am?
I can mention there's a few things as I know them. It predates me a little bit. Some of the decisions that the district made were around power sales and long-term power agreements that the district would have or could have entered into decades ago, where the board of directors decided that we would hold off in anticipation of selling that power over the fence. And so we did not move forward, or ReGen did not move forward with a long-term power purchase agreement, which could have got ReGen a better rate on the power sales. And so the idea was to hold off on committing that power so that it could be sold to that project. The project didn't come to fruition in that time period that was expected. And I believe what the mayor is referring to is some of those lost revenues because ReGen did not enter into a long-term power purchase agreement with PG&E. And so that's some of the legacy items. ReGen did not put time or effort into necessarily the desal plant, but it's some decisions that were made in anticipation of that project. And if I want to see if that got to the mayor's, some of the mayor's, yes.
Yeah, okay. Director McKee.
What year are you referring to?
Oh, gosh, I want to say early 2010s or so. I want to say that before I came on board, some of those decisions were made. I came in around 2015 or something.
Thank you.
Yes.
Through legal counsel, is there any potential that ReGen would be able to recover that lost revenue was really a decision of the board at that time and district to defer that because of Cal-Am? I think it's maybe we can stretch, but I'm not sure if is there a legal position that we would be able to take with Cal-Am over that lost revenue because of discussions.
I think as Mayor Delgado points out, it's just an item for us, for the board to consider. I don't think there's any basis that I can think of. I'm not gonna say yes or no, but I don't believe there's probably any recourse of the district at this time with regard to something that happened several years ago and we lost it and you know, we might have bad feelings about it, but I don't think there's anything that would allow us to go forward and try to recover that money. But it's to the extent that as the mayor's remark is to keep it in mind as we deal with CalAm going forward. There's nothing that allows us to go back and get that.
I just, I'm trying to, Mayor Delgado's point. In retrospect, it sounds like it was a poor board decision. The board at that time, 2010, made a decision based on some assumptions that in retrospect, you know, over a decade ago, didn't pan out. So I think the onus is on the board's decision-making, district's decision-making, not on CalAm.
Yes.
And just to refocus on the agreement itself, all these evaluations we're talking about, all the time the staff could enter into, we wouldn't do unless we sign this agreement, and we could charge CalAm for it. So any staff time that goes looking at history, looking at how the project may impact ReGen, staff will be keeping track of that time and thus could be compensated for it by CalAm. And so that is something that is possible on this, with this agreement.
You know, I'm sorry, let
Yeah.
me just mention, I want to remind you that at this point, we're just authorizing the general manager to discuss this, the negotiating agreement. The only work that's been done so far is my office, we prepared this as a draft for the reimbursement process. It still has to go back to CalAm if they have any suggestions, if there's any changes to this agreement, which I suspect there could be some offered, that will come back to you, just even still to finalize this agreement before there are any discussions. And then as the discussions go on, they will be held with the board directly, and probably the discussions from the viewpoint of this district will be held in closed session by this board.
I have another question. So, we are coming up with this because I'm assuming we got asked some questions from CalAm and then we decided, oh, we need to have something that we're reimbursed. Do you see, if we were to say, you know, right now we don't want to engage in this, we want to wait until let's say we want to know until we hear from the CPUC that they have, you know, they see the need in this water project and then if we wait until that time, look, we could just say, no, we're gonna hold off until we see that it's gonna be more likely that this is gonna happen, and then we'll engage with you. Rob, my question to you is, how do you think that would go over with CalAm? Do you think they would start pressuring us legally to start engaging with them? Do we have to engage with them? Or can we say, no, we're gonna wait a little while until we have a better idea about the project?
How it would go over with CalAm, I could only make a wild guess. I'm sure it would not be real positive on their part. However, there's nothing that requires us to negotiate at this time. But all our thought is that there's no harm in at least discussing the matter and finding out what's involved, to the extent it has any impact or any possibility of going forward, or the board might decide, you know, as the discussions go on, we're not ready to go this far, you know, so there's always an option to sort of opt out of the discussions at a future time.
Okay, yes. Certainly.
Knowing how CalAm plays things in the public, I'm concerned that they would portray this as a win. And as Director Delgado said, the majority of the peninsula does not want this. And I really am reluctant to be part of something that we don't know how Cal-Am would play this, supposed, agreement to discuss things. So I'm concerned about that. And if we don't actually have to do it at this time, what is the point?
That's a policy decision.
I
I will
think,
leave to you folks, but I would suggest that with regard to, we're entering into this, even that we're entering into discussions with the reimbursement agreement, the agreement and those discussions are, it's made very clear, and no one should claim anything other that there's no commitment by this board to reach an agreement. We'll have discussions, period, but we've tried to make it crystal clear, there's no commitment to an agreement.
So to be clear, we do not have to agree to do this even months or years down the line. This is our land. We don't have to commit. Is that correct?
Well, again, we're just committing to talking to them with this draft agreement.
But I mean, are we at some point required to do this, or is this purely up to us to decide?
It's purely up to this board.
Okay, Director Delgado.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, if the board majority does go ahead and vote yes on this proposal, I would hope that we make the agreement as bilaterally fair as possible, and that for our own district responsibility, I think we should insert into the agreement a component that directs Cal-Am to fund our staff time and assessment of lost funds in the past, so that we're better able to negotiate in the future in a fair way. But if they're going to get what they want out of this, it's fiducially responsible for us to add this element to it, so that we don't go blindly into the future without knowing what we've lost when we were open and friendly to Cal-Am in the past, and we did not fare well from those decisions that Mayor Pete refers to, those policy decisions made when we had a board that was very supportive of what Cal-Am wanted to do, believing that it was in our interest. Thank you.
Okay. Do directors have any other further comments, questions, Director Blackwelder?
Yeah, for the last, as long as I can remember, we have been trying to solve our water problems. So whatever efforts that we put forth 15, 20 years ago, it was all in the effort of trying to solve our water problems. As you know, Cal-Am had permits in hand for the dam. Well, we don't even have a dam anymore. I mean, things go on and on and on. I think to have an agreement with Cal-Am where if they're going to eat up our time in any fashion, we get reimbursed. We're not consenting to anything that they're doing. We're just making sure that what happened in the past doesn't happen now. We just have a simple agreement. So that's my spin on it.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and open up this for public comments. I'll take public comments. Anyone in the boardroom or online? All right, I'll close public comments. I don't see anyone. Can I'll ask the board for a motion. We can continue to talk about this, but I am sensing that, I don't know, it sounds like we can put forward this draft so that they can begin negotiations, whether we want to put in there also trying to be reimbursed from past actions. I don't necessarily see that. I agree with Director Peak that the fact that the board sort of made those decisions at that time and we have to sort of live with that decision now. I think we need to be smarter moving forward with our decisions. You know, that I like the idea that we can enter into this negotiation to start talking about how we want to be reimbursed or what that looks like. And then at the end, we can even say, no, we're deciding we don't want to talk at this point. And we want to wait until we do have a project that we know has a little bit more certainty for moving forward. So, Director Delgado.
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this item at this time and take it off the table.
I couldn't really hear that.
I'd like
Director
to make,
Delgado. Go ahead.
I motion that we defer this item at this time and take it off the table.
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay. So the motion is to defer this for another time. Director Delgado, do you have a time frame that you'd want to center around, or is it sort of a nebulous, we just want to delay this or put this off for the future?
Thank you. I think the CPUC hearing to confirm supply demand figures for the need of this project would be a good time frame.
Okay, and my understanding is that should be coming maybe by the end of the year. Director Delgado, do you have a sense for that?
Well, it was supposed to be March of 2024, and there's no specified date now. And so like a lot of things in this regard, it's hard to predict.
Yeah, the last time I asked about this with Paul Shudo, he thought it would be at the end of this year. So we wouldn't be putting this off for, you know, an indeterminate amount of time. That gives us a you know, a point in time to sort of look towards. Any other thoughts from the other directors, Director Peak?
I have a substitute motion, the recommended motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Jerry Blackwelder on moving forward this draft that we have before us. So do we want to, any further discussion on that substitute motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to remind the board, Director Garcia Arzola is on, we haven't confirmed relative to the basis for her, before we take up a vote and consider that whether she can vote, we have to consider her participation, whether under the, you know, the
Oh, you mean Director Barber?
good cause or so forth, just so to find out what.
Okay.
Director Rizzo.
Okay. Because we didn't have Alexis on, we don't have his address. Okay, so can we confirm with Director Garcia Arzola about the reason
Yes.
for being online?
Oh, I'm on official business travel on behalf of the city of Seaside.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have Director Barber online as well.
All right.
Yes, the same thing. I'm on official business for the city of Monterey.
Okay. And welcome, Director Rudescu.
Sorry to log on late. I am officially noticed as a location
Right.
from the
Yes.
lodge in Yosemite. I'm attending the CalAFCO conference and just finished our CalAFCO meeting. So thanks for allowing me to log on a little bit late. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, just so we're all know where we're at, we have a substitute motion, which we'll need to vote on first. That substitute motion is to approve the draft negotiation agreement that we have before us.
Authorize the general manager to negotiate this agreement.
Yes, thank you. The prior motion was from Director Delgado was to put this topic off to the future until the CPUC comes out with its supply and demand decision, so that we can understand whether this project would move forward in any sort of way. And then we can revisit this topic at that time. Okay. So are there any questions from any of the other directors that are online or from those that are in the boardroom?
Yes, I have a question. What would the harm be to defer? Is there any negative to deferring at this point until these numbers are ready?
Well, I can speak for ReGen. No, for CalAm, they may start, they may use other channels to try to get the, to try to encourage us to make a decision or to come to the table. So if we were to defer, my response to CalAm would be, this is being deferred. Our board has decided that we're not authorized to discuss or look at the plans or find out what the actual ask is. And then CalAm would react how that CalAm reacts for that information and per their timelines, which we don't have in hand. We haven't discussed that with them because we're not spending time on it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board members? All right, so let's have a roll call vote on the substitute motion, please. So this is a vote to move forward with allowing our general manager to have negotiations with CalAm about this agreement.
Director Askew,
This is the substitute motion, correct? So my vote is a
Yes.
no on the substitute motion. Thank you.
Director Barber,
No.
Director Blackwelder,
Again, which one is this?
This
We
is the
get-
one you you seconded. So this is just moving forward with what we have before us.
Okay, so that's what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Director Ferlito,
No.
Director Garcia Arzola,
No.
Director McKee,
Yes.
Director Peak,
Yes.
Vice Chair Delgado,
No.
Chair Shirley,
No.
motion.
Motion failed.
Motion failed,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll go ahead and we'll vote on the original motion, which was again to put off this discussion until and have it brought back after the CPUC comes out with their supply and demand decision. Is that correct, Director Delgado? Okay. All right.
Director Askew,
Aye.
Director Barber,
Yes.
Director Blackwelder,
No.
Director Ferlito,
Yes.
Director Garcia Arzola,
Yes.
Director McKee,
No.
Director Peak,
No.
Vice Chair Delgado,
Yes.
Chair Shirley,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on to 7B, which is to authorize the general manager to execute a 15-year base term compost operations and lease agreement with Keith A Company Incorporated, Monterey County, California, subject to approval of form by the district legal counsel.
But thank you, Chair. This item has been in the works for over about a year now, a lot of discussions. Some fundamental positions have been extending the life of the agreement for a 15-year term. We have some very high-level items that we're working with our third-party composter, which is Keith A Company Inc. Through getting us from windrow composting to a cast. There's heavy investments in the assets for running a composting operation. He's carried liability for some time. He's been a great partner for all the municipalities with regards to 1383. It is a municipality responsibility, yet we hold the key to eliminate cost and expenses and risk for the municipalities having to do with Senate Bill 1383. There's many others. We've also took the opportunity to go out to the city of Marina to share about this agreement and composting being an aspect of contribution to odor. We went out there and we shared everything that we do as a regulated landfill. We got very good feedback. It was some feedback that aligned with our finance committee questions on whether a 15-year term is normal for this type of agreement. We also heard what were the outs for failure to comply or failure to run the operation accordingly. So we addressed questions around legal aspects of how do we get out of this agreement. And I think the big one for us was achieving the composting permit to be under the ReGen brand and not under the Keith A brand as a result of the long-term agreement. So we've hit on many items. David's going to do a recap of some of those items. This is definitely favorable for ReGen and its long-term aspiration to stabilize its revenues, have longer term of agreements, and preparing ourselves for the 2036 deadline of the San Jose Greenways volume that helps us with revenue coming into this district. So this is one of those prepare items and be ready. If 15 years would take us to 2039, which would give us a few years after 2036 to consider where we're at with a composter, how they're performing, and how they're complying with regulations if there's been any changes in that term. So I want to say thank you to the Finance Committee for being invested, Keith Day's company for the willingness to negotiate the agreement. All the red line items were the final remaining items that we negotiated with Keith Day. We have Keith Day here today. We also have Keith Shore, who is this controller, and we also have probably soon to be taking over Keith Day company in the near future along with him as well. Small business company, represents small business very well. They do have assets that we don't have. They have contacts in the community to deliver the compost to the row crops in the Salinas Valley. They have alleviated a lot of many pressures that ReGen would have dealt with and some of the municipalities. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to David Ramirez. He did isolate some of these items of concern, and we wanted to better readdress them. And then we'll take questions and concerns after that. Thank you.
Thanks, Felipe. Good morning again. As Felipe mentioned, the red line copy of the changes that you saw from the previous read. So last month we saw this for the first time for the agreement come forward. The red lines indicate what has changed since either the board saw the document or the Finance Committee saw that document. And I won't go into much of those red lines. As Felipe mentioned, it's really to talk about the comments we received from the board and from the community members. And one of the main threads that you'll see in this quick presentation is the idea that currently in the current contracting scheme, Keith Day holds the permit for this site. And that's a big topic for as we think about this agreement. We're at ReGen and the member cities are at risk if for some reason, unfortunate or not, that if they were to close down shop, he would take the business and the permit with him. That leaves not only ReGen in a pickle, it also leaves the jurisdictions in a pickle as far as compliance with SB 1383, the organics management law that the state of California has passed. So keep that in mind as we go through. It's going to be a reoccurring theme to some of these discussions. So as I mentioned, one of the big topics or questions that was brought up was why 15 years, and Felipe touched on it. This is fairly normal for an operations type of agreement like this. A lot of the franchise agreements that are gone into between cities and haulers are 15 years, and that really allows the operator to make investments with confidence that they're going to see a return over the ROI period for those pieces of equipment. It allows them to recover their capital investments. Not only does that 15 years work for the operator, it also works for ReGen and the member agencies. So it's ensuring that the member agencies have a solution for SB 1383 for the next 15 years. That is a good thing on our side as well. As I mentioned, part of the negotiations included discussions about transfer of the operating permit, and the 15 years is also a give and take that ReGen feels is valid enough for this time period. Another reason for the 15 years, ReGen and Keith, they are partnering in the covered aerated static pile grant, and that project is underway. And Keith Day is going to be a big partner in making that transition from static windrows or from standard windrows to the new system. So again, Felipe mentioned this one also. Are there ways to address compliance or service disputes in the agreement? And yes, there are. There's clauses in the agreement that allow for termination. There is A no cause termination, which means either party could decide we want out for no reason, but that only kicks in after 10 years. There is also, before those 10 years, at any time, there is the opportunity for a for cause termination where either compliance is not being met, the services are not being provided, where ReGen could issue a notice to cure to Keith Day on a particular item. It's not cured, then we could follow the contract to address it. Another way that ReGen can address issues is that because ReGen owns the permit, ReGen also has oversight of the compliance topics, air compliance, water board requirements. ReGen is now going to be involved in those topics, reviewing notes, reviewing that those things are getting issued or reported to the regulators and that the condition of the site is within compliance. There was a question about how we keep prohibited materials out of the compost, and that's every day for us. Our staff is trained and is looking at every load every day, all the time, at multiple locations throughout the site. The scales have cameras where we can look into loads. That's our first line of defense. And then also at the drop-off points, there's spotters who are checking the loads to make sure there's no prohibited items in there. And then we also maintain a list of prohibited items, and we've been working with the Keith Day group to talk about invasive plants and how those can be, staff can be trained and also the public can be trained. And unfortunately, we're not going to solve the invasive plant issue here, but we are definitely making our best efforts to try to do our part in making sure that that doesn't get out into the public, and he's been a partner with that effort. And what is being done about odors? Felipe mentioned doing public outreach, going to the city of Marina, which he did at their last month's city council meeting. He gave a presentation about this agreement and the history that ReGen has had with this composter. And we received comments, good comments from the city of Marina residents who spoke on this topic and felt the general consensus was things are getting better and they want them to continue to get better. So we've reached out about this agreement in particular. ReGen and Keith Day both are doing odor investigations and making operational responses to anything that comes up as far as odorous materials. In the permit itself, there's a odor impact minimization plan, which specifies in the permit that the odors need to be addressed. And also in the contract itself, there are provisions that say that odor is a topic that we have recourse on if we deem it to be unsuitable. Also, the move to covered aerated static piles is going to significantly reduce the odors. It's providing more oxygenation, makes the bugs happy in the compost, so they do their job more efficiently, faster, and with less odors. Question we got recently was there a public bid process? And we did do a public bid assessment. So in that assessment is where we think of, we try to figure out if a public bid would be in the best interest of ReGen. And there is an element in there for sole source procurement, and those sole source procurements can be allowed under certain scenarios, which include unique or exclusive rights or processes or product that a service provider may have, an emergency, compatibility with other things that are other pieces of equipment that the public agency has, standardization, cost savings, or particular expertise. And as mentioned at the top of this discussion, Keith Day is the exclusive permit holder for this site. And that is what really qualifies him as the sole source provider for this site. And one of the things in this agreement is that the permit transfers over to ReGen. Another question we received was, should organic materials from out of district be allowed? And we just went through a big discussion about the white paper and how waste travels through from county to county, district to district. And it's really important to think of ReGen as a use-based system. It's not like a city or a county which gets property taxes or gets sales taxes where other people are paying for different services that are received. ReGen gets its revenues solely from the people who use its services. So an increased customer base increases public funds. There's revenue coming from other customers who can then pay back the investments that are made. For that reason, call ReGen an open gate facility. If you drive up to the scales and your money's green, we'll provide you the service. So any questions? I went through really quickly, saved time, but welcome any questions about further discussion on those items or on the agreement itself.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I have a question. I'm very concerned about odors. So this covered aerated static piles, is that something that is going to happen?
Yes.
Does that mean all those piles would be covered with what?
So there is different methods, a tarp that can be placed over it. There's a ramp up period. So because it's a newer technology and the staff is working with the current system, the static piles, it won't be immediate where all the piles are going to be covered, but we will transition to these covered area and static piles. And a little bit more about that is they're covered with a tarp, and then there's a pipe that goes underneath, which is either pushing air out or pulling air in. And we're still in the design phases of which exact system we're going to be choosing, but it's to increase the airflow through the material, through the compost.
So is there a timeline?
Yeah, we have a grant which is going to allow us to do the installation of the infrastructure, which requires some site stuff. So we're thinking probably in the next year or so, the design and the implementation or construction will be completed.
Okay, thank you. And then I had another question. I have a lot of green waste at my house, and a lot of it is vines and also some invasives. And I don't think we're really getting good information, particularly from the haulers, about what to do with that. Do we put it in the trash so it goes in the landfill? Somehow it always seems to get mixed into the green barrel, and then that makes it all have to be dumped in the landfill, correct? If they recognize invasives or vines.
And that's a really good question. And a lot of people are in that situation where they don't know where to put it because and we would suggest to go into the trash bin because, as have been discussed, those seeds, while the temperatures are very high, we do want to just keep them out of the compost to make sure they don't end up on somebody's garden or out in the fields. So we would recommend that those invasives go into the trash because there's really protects the environment from them being further spread.
And the vines clog up the machinery, so they shouldn't be in there as well.
We have an expert right here, so you can talk about what the vines do.
It depends on the vines, you know, we have more problems with like palm trees, that type of fiber is really hard on the equipment and stuff like that. Small vines, obviously not such a huge issue, but just invasive parts of it where it's, you know, it's not good for the crops and most of what we do is for ag land. Most of our compost goes for ag land. And so those are the things we really have to be careful with. But it depends on really some of the vines is more those species and just the volume, the size of those is what's hard on the equipment at times, from an equipment standpoint.
Yeah, because I don't think the word is really getting out there well enough with the invasives, because I know even the cities, when they pick up the piles that we create down in Mission Trail Nature Preserve, majority of that is invasives, and I don't know where, when the city picks up that pile, where they take them. And, you know, I think we're creating problems by maybe not educating people about what is an invasive that's in your yard. And We
Yeah.
should try to cure that.
Absolutely, and we're all partners in that effort. And we can be a voice to try to get that information out. And they and ReGen are working on a list that can be more available. But tell your friends, be another voice out there that kind of helps us along.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just want to comment on your suggestion. This is an item that we can bring to the TAC committee to share with haulers as an interest item. We did work with Keith to look at some of those invasive species, mainly because we heard that through the vice chair. You know, he brought up the item of what is not. And so many times they're handling it right at the service point because it's mixed in. But I think we could bring it to the TAC committee where we can share a little bit more with the haulers and allow the haulers to start making some commitments with the city directly on maybe the newsletter. These items don't go in there, and we'll start there. And some of the haulers have the capacity of leave behind tags that those items don't belong in there as well. So we'll encroach on those items with our TAC committee that brings in all the municipalities and the service providers in it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the directors?
There are a few online.
Okay,
I'm trying to get you guys so we can see you. Sorry, people online.
all right, Director Rudescu.
Yes, thank you. So I guess my questions are just in regards to the odor issues. We had our Monterey Bay Air District meeting earlier this week, and there was a report of 7 odor complaints over 3 days in August. And so when we think about just sort of this existing odor complaints issues that we are struggling to sort of get our arms around, and then we're thinking about moving forward, can you just talk a little bit more about how do we look at, or how do we think about the mitigation of ongoing or future impacts to new odor, to potential new odor sources, as we also recognize that we have somewhere there's some source of current odor issues, and how do we piece that apart, and what are our thoughts around that, or what is written into the contract specifically to address that?
Yeah, there is a section, Exhibit D, and in the handout I did give, and section 4.08, which both discuss odors as contract elements, and areas where ReGen could ask or get recourse on Keith Day if that were to be something that came up and rose to a level of a non-permit compliance or a public nuisance. So there are those provisions in the contract. As far as what ReGen and Keith Day do, we take the odors complaints very seriously, and the Air District, when they get a complaint, does send it to us via email as soon as they receive it. If it's within our operating times, we dispatch, both Keith Day and ReGen dispatch people out to the location to investigate the odor and see if we can confirm and reproduce the complaint's description. Unfortunately, the time lag between some of the complaints and when we can get out there is not always quick, but when we do get a complaint, we will react. We also do these kind of weather assessments of which direction the air is blowing at that time to see what potential odor sources could be, and we submit that to the Air District. And as we heard from the City of Marina folks who are very vested in the odor topic, they've seen a marked improvement in their experience in the City of Marina. So it kind of leads to the best practices that the area or the community is doing in relation to odors. As we've mentioned in the past too, there are other odor sources, other activities in the area, which can also lead to odor. But ReGen is doing its part, and we're very active in that discussion.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I think you touch on a nice subject is there's 7 odor complaints. We respond to all 7. Not every agency that is a contributing factor does the same. And so we can't really link every odor item to ReGen. We do hold ourselves accountable for being contributors to it. That's why we go all the way around to try to figure out what's going on. 2 locations, what's going on in our operations. We send notifications. Is there anything different going on? So I think we go above and beyond, and we're committed to continuing to work with a process that could be improved. Right now, we don't tie back, and sometimes people don't get back to the complaint person directly of what's going on. They could be notified that the item is being addressed, but it doesn't really say where it's coming from. What's the contributing factors? Did we find or isolate any items that were occurring here on ReGen property? We're also aware of what other items and activities are going on around the neighbor's ag land, distribution of compost, distribution of fertilizers or items that are additives to the field that can contribute. We also talked about the sewer systems that exist in Marina that can be contributing factors. I'm not an expert, nor do I want to point at any other agency. Our position has been, we will continue to regulate ourselves above and beyond the regulations that we have by multiple agencies that have oversight of our facility. We're a regulated landfill. We have MBARC, the Air Source Report. We have the Water Board. We have the LEA, and compliance is being met. And we want to exceed that by sharing the processes that we hold with odor. But again, to reference all the odor items as direct link to ReGen, it's kind of impossible to really know whether that's a true statement or not. We do contribute, and we do know that weather patterns can influence when we're that contributing factor. So thus, we have a big interest in investigating every complaint because we know we're the ones that want to be at the forefront of those investigations and the participation in mitigation, and also being able to share with the communities. Here's everything that we're regulated on, and here's all the factors that we're doing. That thus, you know, we went out to Marina. I think I seen Lane join us this morning. And, you know, I think what we're looking at is just to continue to work as partners as items occur, and how do we do a better job of relaying it. Again, the request is to allow us to execute an agreement upon approval form of district council. One of the items that is pending, and we haven't received a feedback document that was going to be created by legal counsel from Marina. It'll give us an opportunity to evaluate what the response is and incorporate any items that we feel could add value to the agreement. That's essentially what's left in the discussion for this agreement.
Right. No, thank you so much. And I think it's just it is one of those things that continues to be an issue for residents in Marina. And I think it's really important that the community of Marina knows and hears that ReGen takes these issues seriously and is fully transparent and responsive and doing everything that we can and should be doing to both build into our contracts, that we're holding all of those who are operating on our property accountable and following through on reports when they do come in. I want to, again, we tell people, you know, make sure you're reporting these issues when they do come up so that we can take appropriate action. And I just really appreciate the response today. But that was my one question. So thank you so much for the answer, and pass it over to who's next, Bruce, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Barber.
Yes, so I still have concern about with Keep Day holding the permit in the business. So do we have ways to mitigate that, and how do we recoup if all of a sudden he, you know, takes his ball and goes away, so to speak, right? How do we recoup that financially?
If I understand the question, it's about the current situation where Keith Day does hold the permit, as opposed to the new agreement, which would transfer the permit ownership to ReGen. Is that correct?
Right, so if it transfers, so the permit would be transferred to us. I'm just trying to get clarity on that. So how does that look, that transfer? Does that mean
Okay.
that,
I get
yeah,
it,
just,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so the permit transfer would be relatively simple. It's an administrative task because Keith Day is relinquishing the permit and ReGen is accepting the ownership of the permit. So it's a paper exercise, pretty much with the regulators. It's
Okay,
fairly
so-
simple. It's a form we fill out and we both sign it.
so it's just a
and-
paper transfer. So does
Exactly, yeah.
responsibility transfer different, what changes in responsibility once that permit is transferred to us?
So Keith Day is still obligated to operate a compliant composting facility, and the same requirements still exist on his responsibility list. ReGen could then wrap a couple of the permit topics into the bigger scope that ReGen has, which is an air permit item, the Title V. ReGen could pull it in and have one larger, it's a slightly larger report that ReGen would submit on both ReGen's behalf and Keith Day's behalf. And then ReGen becomes kind of a data collection and assist on the reporting for Keith Day on topics related to the health department, air board, and the water board. So it's kind of a situation that we've been executing already. ReGen's been a partner in helping Keith Day achieve compliance and been a technical consultant for Keith Day as well. This just more formalizes it into ReGen being a leader in making sure that gets done.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Or Delgado was on there and now he's gone. So are there any further questions? Yes, Director Pete.
I had a question, and forgive me for asking, but my impression is that the odor study that was completed in December of last year did not sort of point the finger at specific operations, but it did, as was stated already, allude to there's the local farming, there's obviously M1W as well as ReGen and maybe others. And it had a long list of operational recommendations. And my understanding is that the Marina Council created a subcommittee that Director Delgado is on. And they were going to look at those recommendations from this odor study and decide which ones they needed to address or our operations needed to address, but I haven't heard anything back from them.
So one of the recommendations that was made in that study was to go from windrow composting to a cover aerated static pile, which is the new composting mechanism or system. It was already in our planning system. We already had received the grant. So if you took the major piece, that was the major component for ReGen to comply with, and it was already an item in effect, and that had been shared with the city and some of that subgroup committee around odors. So there was awareness when they did the study. I did speak at Marina that evening, and we did talk about we already have cast in the pipeline. Also, SES made some comments about our organization, and I made the same comment at the last meeting was, you know, our peers in the organization that runs landfill look at us as an elite landfill operation. We want to continue to be that. That's why we stay vested interest in what we're hearing from our board, from staff, and from the community as well. And we're applying them all now. So I felt we were in a great position after the study. I think the study was deficient because they put a lot of odor probes here on site, and we know we manage everything the public and the community can't manage themselves. But they weren't able to put the links of these probes and odors in the city to say one was causing the other. I think there was one probe location in Marina. There could have been many more, and my position, personal position, could have been, you know, where those odor complaints were coming from the history log. we might have had put probes out there, is there's something else contributing to. So I think that was still left to be resolved in the study aspects. They gave more of operational components, and we felt we were complying all the way to the T with almost every item that was stated in that SES outcome of the study itself.
So is City of Marina asking for more or a continuation of the SCS odor study?
They haven't asked for any more. They had assigned Bruce and Brian McCarty to do that subcommittee. And we wanted to go and share more information in advance to signing the agreement so that if they can contribute aspects that would enhance our agreement, that we can do so. And I also wanted to avoid running into Lane and Bruce after we executed an agreement and not give them an opportunity to give us feedback. So essentially, we still have a window before we execute to hear the feedback that would come from, I think Marina attorney was gonna look at some of the risk languages, were they accurate to what David described, the outs, early, the cure process, all those were gonna be evaluated. So we'll wait and hear back, and then we can execute on the agreement.
All right, let's go ahead and open this item up for public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this agenda item? Please step forward.
Hi, Lane Long, I'm the city manager with Marina, and we do apologize. Our attorney was going to be getting this letter to you, and we appreciate you acknowledging that. And there's just some things that our council wanted to be sure that that in this contract that we looked at, we were a little concerned about the length of the contract and just wanted to be sure that it was dealing with the most recent technologies and would continue to do that. We really do appreciate all your efforts in working with us on those older issues. And yes, there's nothing definitive, but I think we're making progress and we're very glad that you're moving forward with that covering. We think that that'll be big. And so we're going to just continue to work with you on your progress as you continue to move forward with your plan. And we just appreciate having that open dialogue with you. So thank you very much.
We appreciate the comments. And one of the additional items that we brought up with the city and the subcommittee was the future development of the Marina Station homes that would be coming in. So that will be an item that we'll circle back to and have a little bit discussions around as how are those people being notified? What's the remedy to that? Is it a informational of our service that we can give to those folks to give out and distribute at that time? So we're looking at every way to notify intentfully in advance of receiving additional complaints as well. So I like our position with Marina. It's much to improve. We're hearing. I think we also are committed that we do contribute, and I'm not sure if that's always been our position. But we effortlessly have been working on it. Keith has cut out certain items that he's receiving because they were odorous and they were causing complications. So we cut them out of the equation. So he's cut out a lot of those processes. So final items that I wanna, really.
Mayor, we do have another public comment.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah,
Felipe.
we appreciate Keith Day in a time when composting services at ReGen could have walked away. He came in, took over a company that was essentially gonna fold and close, and he made it exist. Also in 2022, we had to pivot really hard because of 1383 compliance, and that was to start getting organic matter into the green waste bins in residential collection. He hasn't wavered from the difficult changes through legislation and the needs of the communities and the need of ReGen. And thus, I think he will continue to be a great partner for us. And we do have risk and liability coverage in the agreement to make assessments along the way. But we have a lot of work ahead of us, and having a proven partner as part of our objectives in the next couple of years and also over a longer period of time would be a great benefit and resource for the ReGen team. So we can go back to public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take there's a public comment online.
Yes, from Renee Ortega.
All right, Renee, happy to take your comment.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, hi, Renee Ortega, City Attorney for the City of Marina. Yes, I heard mention of the letter that is forthcoming, and I guess my only suggestion, I think one of the things that we had a concern about was, as city manager mentions, was sort of the length of the contract and having the ability to that does not foreclose the ability to implement new technology, odor odor control technology sooner rather than sort of, waiting to the end of the term. The other concern we had was that we wanted to make sure that there was explicit mention in the agreement of the implementation of the CASP system, which I believe is referenced in the recitals of the agreement, but I'm not sure that it's explicitly referenced in terms of implementing that technology within the agreement. So we just wanted to make that clear that that was going to happen. But the only other thing I would suggest is if there's the ability to give the general manager negotiation authority to make those changes to the agreement as this agreement moves forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Are there any other public comments either online or reporter? No? Okay. I do want to point out that the recommended motion does move this forward subject to approval of form by the district legal counsel. So that does give it space for Marina and the district to continue talking. And without any substantive changes, this could move forward. So, are there any further comments from the board?
Well, I would just, the comments that were made by the attorney of Marina, did you want to opine on what he said and give us a little more information of what he's asking and how we're going to try to cooperate on this?
Well,
The CASP agreement, I think, coming sooner than later, and the term, the 15-year term.
To the chair.
Yes.
I think the questions will be assessed by our legal attorney and he'll make some recommendations.
Okay.
And then we'll seek the pathway. I'm the concern of the CAS coming in. I'm not so concerned about because it is an item that has been in the works. We do have a $2 million grant and then we'll match that grant with some of our own funds as well. So we're pretty sure it's coming. We don't think we're going to defer that for 15 years away. And then we'll take his other items with implementing new technology and odors as a consideration into the agreement. So I think we can definitely wait to receive their letters. Have Rob take a look at it and then we can work through those items. They're not significant.
All right, thank you.
So we'll get that, we'll review that, move forward and get this agreement signed.
Okay. All right. All right, well, I'll be ready to accept a motion then. There's no further comments or questions.
Move the recommended motion, action.
Second.
All right. Okay, so it was initiated by Director Peak and seconded by Director McKee. So we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Director Askew,
Aye.
Director Barber,
Yes.
Director Blackwelder,
Yes.
Director Ferlito,
Yes.
Director Garcia Arzola,
Aye.
Director McKee,
Yes.
Director Peak.
Aye.
Vice Chair Delgado. Chair Shirley,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, we'll move on to staff reports. We've got 8A report on the Technical Advisory Committee from September 11th.
Thank you, Chair. Today we have Eric Palmer, our Senior Communications Personnel for ReGen Monterey. He's filling in for Director Zoe Schultz, who is out on school time today.
Good morning, Chair Shirley and Directors. Eric Palmer, Senior Communications Coordinator. Here to give you a brief update on the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, which took place on September 11th. The TAC received the same excellent presentation that you all received on the September 20th board meeting from Franco Guzman, our communications specialist, about school outreach and SB 1383 compliance. Your staff and local waste haulers heard about how Franco and Waste Management's Christian Thornley work together to assist local school districts to comply with recycling and food waste diversion and mandates. As a reminder, 17 schools in the Monterey Unified, Pacific Grove Unified, and Carmel Unified School Districts receive support in the form of in-person presentations and assemblies and lunchroom sorting. And I can attest he's really good at his job. I go along with him sometimes. He's very professional and engaging with students to not only help the schools comply with these mandates, but also make local students lifelong environmentalists and know how to and proper waste sorters for life. The TAC also received a presentation from Blue Strike Environmental. So ReGen Monterey contracts with Blue Strike to develop a SB 1383 enforcement toolkit for jurisdiction staff. That's because CalRecycle requires jurisdictions to do SB 1383 enforcement. This comprehensive toolkit, it's on a shared digital drive, and it includes an overview of enforcement requirements, data entry instructions, checklists, and example materials. And those include sample waivers, edible food recovery, inspection forms, code enforcement letters, and notices to businesses and multifamily housing, among many other materials. Lastly, the ReGen communication staff virtually attended the California Resource Recovery Association's annual conference, and staff shared some highlights and a high level overview with the TAC. SB 54, which is California's Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act, which is currently in the rulemaking process, was a major topic, and save the date for August 3rd through 6th because the CRA conference is going to come to Monterey. And if you're interested in taking a deep dive into trends and best practices in waste management in California. So that's about it.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Questions for Eric? No? All right. Thank you for your report. All right, we'll move on to 8B, review the September finance operating and recycling reports. All right.
Morning, board members. We're through the first quarter of our fiscal 2025 year, and overall things are generally pretty good. Our revenue for the first quarter is about 13.5 million, and we were about 800,000 below plan on that. Breaking that down a little more, our tip fee revenue is down about 900,000 from budget, and that's primarily due to two items. We have lower MSW material, which is municipal solid waste, and also lower ADC, which is alternate daily cover. So those numbers are down from where they should be, and they will probably pick up during the rest of fiscal 2025. The other revenue item of significance is our power revenue, which is about 200,000 below plan for the year to date. And we've had several issues with the equipment in the power generating area. And actually the power generated from January of this year through September is down 30% from where it was in January to where it is through September. So, we're seeing lower power generation, which is then reflected in lower power revenue that's coming in. Operating expenses are better than planned by about $500,000. And our change in net position or net income is about 2.1 million, and we're about 40,000 above plan. So we're essentially on plan. However, a portion of that overage from plan on the operating income is due to the fact that we have sold some assets and generated a gain of about $95,000 on sold assets. So that's contributing to our better bottom line. In terms of material activity, through September, we've received about 220,000 tons of material, which is down about 36,000 from the same period last year. And the two components that make up that big difference are lower MSW receipts and lower ADC receipts, which translates into lower revenue for those items as well. Looking at our diversion rate, our overall diversion rate is about 63.2%. And looking at comparable period last year, we're actually better. Last year for the same period, it was about 59.8. So the diversion rate has improved. And that is primarily in the C and D area. And that's about it as far as our operations. Any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Questions from the directors?
Thank you, Mr. Gregson, for the usual fine detailed report. I noticed you reported tonnage, and admittedly, it's just the first quarter. But tons received are down 16%. Any
Well,
thoughts?
yeah, without getting too complicated here, one of the larger items in our materials received is this ADC material, which is alternate daily cover, which is used at the landfill. And that primarily comes from one source. And we have a contract with that source. And the contract stipulates that, they're supposed to deliver up to 50,000 tons a year at a certain price, tip fee price. And previously they had just been bringing material and not really paying too much attention to the total. And then we noticed that, well, hey, wait a minute, guys, you've gone over the limit here. And so if you want to go over 50,000 tons, that's fine, but we're going to charge you the normal tip fee rate, because they get a much lower rate for the ADC product. So they're paying closer attention to their deliveries. And so the delivery year started on September 1. So the July and August ADC deliveries were relatively low, but then September has jumped up dramatically. And that will probably continue. Now, since we're both watching, the total tonnage being delivered by them. And so when they get to 50,000 tons, or, then they'll probably shut it down. But it primarily all comes from one source. In terms of the MSW, there isn't any real solid explanation as to why that's down. However, it's likely it will pick up because it does kind of pick up in this time of year.
I was just thinking, this might be a great place to put a little chart, tonnage received or tonnage received and processed year over year. So to identify trends, things that are happening, and you just described well what's happening. It occurred to me, I'm sure, well, we all know the business of the district is tons of stuff in, tons of stuff out, and that's the business. So if we knew whether the business was increasing, flat, decreasing, I'm sure you've asked yourself this question from time to time. And something like a little chart here might help answer that question or provoke some thought. So thank you. And
I have a chart which will go in. Actually, there used to be a chart that was included that basically compared tonnage coming in before the green waste agreement, because the green waste agreement, when it came into play, dramatically impacted the tons coming in here. And that kind of became less relevant because everybody knows green waste is a big impact on the district. But there is a chart that I can insert, and that will appear in the future.
Year over year. So
Year
we'll
over
see
year.
what's going on, where the business is going.
Yeah.
I think that would be of interest, answer a few questions that are in board members' minds.
Generally, that chart used to show, though, the trend was tonnage was going up.
Yeah,
A little each year, not a huge amount, but it was increasing.
well, good to know. And of course, as always, I love your pie charts. Thank you.
Glad you like it.
Just a comment on that. Can we infer at all that maybe people aren't buying as much stuff to throw away? I mean, they're actually reducing, which would be a positive if we were losing tonnage due to that. And wouldn't we actually, in the great scheme of things, environmentally want less tonnage eventually, because we can't just keep throwing everything away all the time.
That's probably a very valid suggestion, because the other material categories, like the green waste and concretes, things like that, they're not really changing much. They're staying pretty consistent. But the MSW is the one that's changed, which suggests, as you said, that maybe people are just throwing away less stuff. So, well, obviously we'll keep watching that and see what happens.
Good questions. All right, any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it. All right, 9 other correspondence. We have none, so 10, we'll go on to the general manager communications.
I have a few general manager communications. First one was October 3rd. We had a wellness fair that was conducted by the HR team. It was supported by the safety and communications team. This is where we gave out some vegetables and some fruits at that wellness fair. We had opportunity for them to get blood pressures checked and also receive flu injections for the seasonal period. So very excited, another successful event with the wellness fair. Second item I have was presentation to City of Marina that you guys heard on, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Again, this was just an approach for us to receive feedback from our neighbor that we know has a vested interest in what we're doing here at ReGen. We also had a tour provided to Middlebury Institute. The communications team hosted Middlebury Institute graduate students in an environmental policy and management tour. Students were able to see ReGen's operations, see the tour, see some of our environmental policies. So another successful outreach from our communications team. We also had the Oregon Refuse Recycling Association Convention. They had a session titled Getting the Word Out. They asked our senior communications representative to attend and share what we were doing. They have done a tour in the past, and we're very excited with all our social media, all our ways that we're using to facilitate communications of what we're doing here at ReGen. Another good highlight for us, University of California research project. UC Berkeley is continuing the research of different ways to quantify fugitive landfill gas emissions. The research team has deployed a number of flux chambers and drone systems, ground-proof airplane and satellite measurements around fugitive emissions. So we're just staying interested. We want all, the experts' insight, because this is where regulation is starting to be developed through research. So we have a few campuses that are very interested in being here at ReGen, helping us figure out some solutions. Another great item a few months back, through networking, I was invited to a Google X summit. I was not able to attend due to schedule, but David Ramirez and Katie O'Connor were able to attend. We just had a follow-up tour with the Google X representative through the MRF. There are some aspirations to help us with infrastructure for a recycling grant from the EPA. So just hearing, a gamut of wish list items that we would essentially spend on MRF upgrade 3.0 or maybe upgrades that we desire to capture more material. But I think the view of working with Google gives us another dimension of creating new products that may not be recycled today because there's no market for it. And it looks like Google brings those people that can help be vested in a market and partnering with public agencies to develop ways to do it. So I think this is just the cusp of it. There's no real plan at this point, and we are considering to put our name on our hat for the EPA grant, and we're taking some guidance from Google and our team from the material recycling facility. Jay, the director of operations, is highly involved. He really understands the machinery well, what works well, what doesn't work so well, and then where we want to put the first priorities at for MRF upgrades in the future. So we think this could be a capital opportunity for us where we're not having to put full investments in capitals to get some results out of our materials recycling facility. We had our 18-month inspection. Areas of concern were corrected. We had one area of concern, and it was only the method of our tarping system. And so what we did is we went back, did a formal training with our operators on how to cover. We responded to the area of concern. We gave training, follow-up, and here's what it looks like now. And so the area of concern goes away. It was not a violation, but David and his team did a really good job to work with operations to put a response in on the area of concern. So doing what we need to be doing. Site security, We are working on installing some new cameras throughout our facility, and it's just really to enhance better monitoring opportunities for our area. And my final comment is save the date. We have our employee holiday dinner that will be held December 14th. It'll be held at the Country Club Golf Course in Salinas. So if you have any questions or inquiries, we'll be happy to have all of you guys attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Deacon. All right, we'll move on to board communications, and we do have an item is to appoint an ad hoc nomination committee to consider board chair and vice chair appointments for next year. So the idea is that two people will volunteer to be on an ad hoc nomination committee. They'll do some inquiry during the month, and then they'll come back in November with a recommendation for chair and vice chair for next year. So is there anyone who's interested in being on this ad hoc committee? I just need two of you. Not all at once.
I'm happy to volunteer to be on the nomination committee.
Okay, thank you,
This is
Director
when-
Rudescu.
Okay.
Thank you. So who would like to join Director Rudescu on this ad hoc committee? I think Director Blackholder did it last year.
Yeah, the last
Yeah, so he's experienced. I nominate Director Blackwell.
I am
Director.
Blackwell. In fact, I think you'd be a great candidate.
Yeah, okay, who would like to work with Director Rudescu?
Perfect. So, yes.
And
It looks like you nodded, yes.
this is on the schedule for November 22nd.
Bring it.
Absolutely,
bring
that's
it
the
back.
deadline.
Well,
That's the intent. The discussion with the chair was we would like to get these appointments done in November rather than wait till January appointment time. Yes.
Okay.
all right, Director Peak, you're on it. All right. Director Peak, Director Rudescu, thank you so much for being on the ad hoc committee.
Thanks for volunteering.
All right, and with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting will be November 27th. Thank you everyone for being here. Have a good weekend.